Across vast stretches of land, from the pine forests of the South to the open plains of the Midwest, wild boars have become one of the most unstoppable forces in the American landscape. What began as a limited introduction centuries ago has turned into a sweeping invasion that now affects nearly every corner of the country. Today, experts estimate that more than 6 million wild boars roam the United States, taking over millions of acres despite continuous human attempts to push them back. Wild boars are not just survivors. They are masters of adaptation. They thrive in environments as different as humid swamps, dry grasslands, or cultivated farmlands. Wherever food and water can be found, these animals quickly establish themselves. Farmers who once saw them as a curiosity now face devastating losses. Entire fields of corn, soybeans, and wheat can be destroyed overnight, leaving behind churned soil and broken irrigation systems. The U.S. Department of Agriculture calculates annual damages in the billions, making wild boars one of the costliest invasive species in the nation. Part of their unstoppable expansion lies in their biology. A single female can reproduce twice a year, giving birth to litters of up to a dozen piglets. In less than a year, these piglets themselves are ready to breed, fueling a population growth that outpaces nearly every attempt at control. Even with hunters eliminating hundreds of thousands annually, the overall numbers continue to climb. It is a cycle that seems impossible to break. Every time the population decreases in one region, new groups spread from others. Beyond the fields, wild boars create havoc in ecosystems. Their constant digging for roots and insects tears apart fragile soils, increasing erosion and altering the natural composition of habitats. They compete with native species for food, threaten ground-nesting birds by consuming eggs, and even prey on small mammals. What appears to be simple foraging behavior is, in reality, a destructive force reshaping ecosystems across entire states. The threat is not only environmental or economic. Wild boars are carriers of more than 30 diseases, including swine fever, brucellosis, and leptospirosis. These diseases can jump to livestock and, in rare cases, to humans, raising alarms among veterinarians and public health officials. A single outbreak in a hog farm can devastate local economies, as quarantines and mass culling become necessary measures. For many rural communities, the presence of wild boars is not just a nuisance, but a constant risk. Control methods have become increasingly sophisticated. In Texas and Florida, for example, aerial hunts with helicopters and night vision equipment are deployed to track and eliminate large groups. Trapping systems designed to capture entire herds at once have been introduced, and some states experiment with contraceptive programs. Yet, despite all these measures, the results remain discouraging. For every group of wild boars removed, another appears, sometimes traveling dozens of miles to occupy the same land. Perhaps the most surprising element of this invasion is the intelligence of these animals. Farmers and hunters alike describe how quickly wild boars learn to avoid traps, how they change their routes to escape human pursuit, and how they communicate danger among their groups. Far from being chaotic, their movements often show a collective strategy that allows them to survive in landscapes increasingly hostile to them. The expansion is relentless. Once limited to the southeast, wild boars now appear in more than 35 states. From California to New York, reports emerge of farmland destroyed, suburban neighborhoods disturbed, and natural parks overrun. For many Americans, encounters with wild boars are no longer extraordinary, but part of daily life. Families in rural areas tell stories of hearing herds passing by at night, overturning garbage, tearing through gardens, and even threatening pets and livestock. The story of wild boars in the United States is more than just an account of an invasive species. It is a portrait of resilience, adaptation, and the limits of human control over nature. Despite billions spent and countless strategies tested, these animals continue to expand, raising the question: are they a problem to be solved, or have they already become a permanent part of America's landscape? The rise of wild boars in North America is not an accident of nature. but the result of centuries of human choices. Their first introduction dates back to European settlers, who brought pigs for food and farming. Some escaped into the wild and quickly adapted. In the 20th century, another wave arrived when hunters imported Eurasian boars for sport. Over time, these populations interbred, creating the modern feral hog, larger, stronger, and more adaptable than either of its ancestors. From the beginning, humans underestimated their resilience. Early farmers believed that occasional hunting and fencing would be enough to control them. But the reproductive capacity of the animals, combined with their intelligence, turned those assumptions into costly mistakes. Within decades, isolated populations began to link together, forming vast networks that spread from state to state. What once seemed like scattered outbreaks became a continental challenge. Governments responded with escalating measures. In Texas, a multi-million-dollar campaign deploys helicopters, professional hunters, and coordinated trapping efforts across private and public lands. In California, strict reporting systems tracked the spread of boars into new counties. The federal government even launched a national feral swine damage management program, investing tens of millions annually to reduce populations and protect agriculture. Yet, despite these efforts, the number of wild boars has continued to climb out. The difficulty lies in the sheer scale of the problem. To truly reduce populations, experts estimate that at least 70% of the animals would need to be removed every single year. In practice, hunters and officials rarely reach even half of that number. And with each litter of piglets maturing in less than 12 months, the cycle of growth surpasses human intervention. The consequences extend far beyond farmland. In rural communities, the presence of wild boars has forced lifestyle changes. Families reinforce fences, avoid letting children play outside at night, and adapt routines around the risk of sudden encounters. Drivers in southern states face increasing numbers of road accidents caused by collisions with these animals, some of which weigh more than 200 pounds. For many, the wild boar has become an unwanted neighbor, living just beyond the edge of the forest. But the debate is not only about danger. For some hunters, wild boars represent an abundant resource and a challenge worth pursuing. To them, these animals are not just a destructive force. They are also a symbol of raw wilderness that has somehow survived into the modern age. Hunting wild boars has become a growing industry in certain states, where organized events attract sportsmen from across the country. Boar meat, once dismissed as undesirable, has entered specialty markets and upscale restaurants, promoted as both exotic and sustainable. For some chefs, it offers a rustic flavor that connects diners to a primal past. This dual perception, destructive pest on one side, valuable game animal on the other, complicates the conversation about how to manage them. Every year, state legislatures face heated conflicts, farmers demanding eradication to protect their livelihoods, and hunters defending their right to pursue the species, often arguing that controlled hunting is the best form of population management. The tension between these groups reflects a deeper question about the balance between human needs, economic interests, and ecological realities. Globally, the story is not unique to America. In Europe, wild boars are native, but their populations have exploded in recent decades due to milder winters, reduced hunting pressure, and abundant crops. In countries like Germany, they have invaded suburban neighborhoods, overturning gardens, frightening residents, and even causing accidents on highways. Authorities there have been forced to adopt strict control policies, including organized culls and expanded hunting seasons. In Italy and Spain, similar measures have sparked debates over animal welfare and cultural traditions. In Japan, abandoned rural areas have given boars new opportunities. As younger generations move to cities, entire villages are reclaimed by nature, and wild boars roam freely through empty streets and rice fields. These encounters create dramatic clashes between modern infrastructure and ancient wilderness, reminding observers that when humans retreat, nature quickly returns. In Australia and South America too, boars have become invasive, threatening native wildlife and sparking expensive eradication campaigns. The spread of these animals shows a universal truth. When conditions are favorable, wild boars thrive in ways few species can match, turning local challenges into global phenomena. In the United States, however, the challenge carries a particular weight. With millions of acres of farmland at risk, the economic and ecological stakes are higher than ever. Experts warn that without new and radical solutions, wild boars could double their numbers within the next 2 decades, extending their range in the states that have so far avoided large populations. For farmers already struggling with volatile markets, climate pressures, and rising costs, the relentless spread of wild boars feels like one more crisis that cannot be ignored. For conservationists, their expansion raises urgent questions about biodiversity, disease transmission, and the limits of human control over invasive species. As the sun sets over endless fields and forests, the future remains uncertain. Will technology, policy, and relentless human effort finally succeed in slowing their advance? Will genetic research, contraceptive programs, or new trapping methods provide a lasting solution? Or will wild boars remain one of nature's most defiant survivors, carving their place permanently into the American landscape? The answer is not yet clear. What is certain is that these animals, once underestimated, now stand as a living symbol of resilience and adaptation. A reminder that in every corner of the globe, nature often writes its own rules. Even in the modern world, with satellites above and fences below, wild boars prove that the struggle between human ambition and the untamed wild is far from over.